The Murder Shelf Book Club contains disturbing content related to real-life crimes. Listener discretion is advised.
The Las Vegas Massacre CONNECTIONS is not a book of sorrow, but rather a different way of looking at the effect of tragedy and overcoming them. Much light can be found during the darkest times. Had the 2017 evening not happened, MaryJo would have never met Tommy Maher, a Long Island fire commissioner who travels the country doing random acts of kindness on his own dime. Tommy's inspiration came after his best friend, a fellow firefighter, died in the 9/11 attacks. Had that 2017 evening not happened, MaryJo would have never met Jeff Dion, a lawyer who got the statute of limitation laws changed to allow sexual assault victims to go after their abusers. And Jeff's inspiration came after a serial killer murdered his sister. From the Las Vegas Massacre CONNECTIONS by Mark Gray, with contributions from MaryJo von Tillow. Welcome to the Murder Shelf Book Club podcast. I am your host, Jill. Connections. Connections forged in grief and heartache, and connections forged in healing and friendship. Today, I have a very special episode for you on a book written by journalist Mark Gray, The Las Vegas Massacre CONNECTIONS, Finding Strength Through Tragedy After America's Deadliest Mass Shooting. I heard about this book and I was intrigued. And frankly, I expected a blow-by-blow of what happened that night at a country music concert in Las Vegas when a killer shot over 1,000 rounds out the Mandalay Bay Hotel window. This book is not that. In my review of Mark Gray's book, I wrote, "This book represents an inspiring portrait of survival after horrific loss, focusing on the victims, survivors, and their families and friends, as well as the connections that bind them together on a journey to recover and renew. These genuine, raw, and personal accounts reflect the resilience and healing that can emerge amidst the pain and grief when a loved one is lost. While it is inspiring and altruistic, this is the best of humanity stemming from the worst of humanity, and I encourage you to read the Las Vegas Massacre CONNECTIONS book. It would make a marvelous holiday gift, which reminds me, my merch shop is open. Here is a shameless self-promoting plug. Just go to www.jusaskjan, justaskjan.com/murder-shelf-book-club. And it's on my blog. You know where to find it. Our author, Mark Gray, is originally from the Salt Lake City area, and after attending Weber State University, he began his career writing general news at the Standard Examiner in Ogden, Utah. Well, it wasn't long before he became their lead crime reporter. Now, over the past 20 years, Mark has contributed to several popular cultural magazines, including Rolling Stone. And in 2005, he moved to Los Angeles and took a job in public relations, which he really enjoyed. However, a year later, when People magazine offered him a position, he couldn't turn it down. Since then, he's been involved with the Entertainment magazine and has covered all news related to Las Vegas. Mark was part of People's coverage of the O.J. Simpson robbery case and Prince Harry's Las Vegas adventures. Mark has interviewed celebrities, entrepreneurs, influencers, and even a president of the United States. Impressive man. A sports fanatic, Mark spends far too much time watching football, baseball, hockey, tennis, and please do not limit his appreciation for sports to just those. If it has a ball, he's probably following it. And from his bio on Amazon, quote, He's been to every Major League Baseball stadium in the country and writes a weekly satirical sports gambling column for station casinos, so he gets to call his avid ESPN viewership work, end quote. Well, this is Mark's first book, and it stems from him being the only print reporter to cover the Route 91 Harvest Festival, and it resonates more profoundly because he himself is a survivor. On the final night of a 3-day country music fest, just as singer Jason Aldean began singing When She Says Baby, a series of rapid gunshots erupted. At first, many assumed that it was fireworks, but it was not. For 10 terrifying minutes, bullets continued to rain down on the crowd of 22,000 people. Ultimately, 58 people lost their lives. So this made me think of the Aurora Movie Theater massacre, which I just covered, and that shooting lasted 90 seconds. This was 10 minutes. In the chaos, many believed that there were multiple shooters because the concert speakers amplified the sound of gunshot firing through the venue as attendees ran, screamed, bled, and succumbed to the attack. All of this carnage was caused by a single gunman who was later found dead on the 32nd floor of the hotel from a self-inflicted gunshot wound. Now, miraculously, Mark Gray emerged physically uninjured. Within 2 hours, he wrote and published a brief account of what he had witnessed at the shooting, and he has since expanded on this, and you can find a link to his Rolling Stones article on my blog at www.murdershelfbookclub.com. In the aftermath, Mark spoke to a trauma counselor to reassure himself that his reactions to this were normal, and he has a strong dislike for fireworks, which I can understand. So with this introduction for context, let me welcome Mark Gray to the Murder Shelf Book Club podcast.
Thank you.
Mark, I don't know if you read my review about your book, but it blew my mind.
Oh, well, thank you.
It really, really did. And I've had a lot of thoughts afterwards and like, God, what's happened to these people is horrible. And at the same time, the after effects are amazing.
Yeah. And that was sort of I mean, you nailed it. That's exactly what we tried to get with this book.
Yeah. Well, you did. You succeeded in spades. It's like, now how do we bottle this?
Yeah.
And get this out there to the people who have experienced trauma. And everybody has experienced some kind of trauma, some kind of loss.
That's what I tell everyone too, is, trauma can really be anything. It can be anything. And everyone's experienced in some facet or another. It's just, sort of on that sort of range of trauma, where do you fit in? And some of these people, obviously some of these are pretty extreme cases. Yeah.
When I saw the book, I anticipated the traditional true crime book, the blow by blow of, this guy got in the elevator, went and did this. And that was so not
what happened. Yeah.
Yeah. This was my dream true crime book. It really was.
Yeah. The title can be deceiving because of that, because that's what everyone goes towards, is like, oh, it's going to be, kind of, rehashing that day and, what this man did and so on and so forth. And that's just not what we went for. That's not what we set out to do. And I've had many people say that same thing to me about, when I picked it up, but, I wasn't quite sure what to expect, because I thought it would be kind of what you thought, like just sort of retelling of the day. And it's not at all what they got.
No, it's still a book about terrible things that happened. And it was uplifting.
Yeah.
Because it's about the terrible days that people had, but it's not about that day or that period of time. It's about the aftermath. Correct. And what happens. And I know that MaryJo von Tillow reached out to you. You had met at the Angels baseball game, and correct. She then reaches out to you and has this idea. How did that turn into what the book became? Did you always know?
No, we didn't really know. What she had this idea for a book about what she went through, and she'd called me and said, "Hey, I have this idea. about it, and I don't really know where to go from here. I don't even know if we have a book, or if there's, is this a book? Is this a magazine article? Is this nothing? And so I actually flew to her home. At the time, she lived in Southern California. She's now in Florida, but I went there and went to her house. We just spent all day together, just hanging out in our living room, just chatting about, all things life, all things, Route 91, October 1, 2017, October 2, 2017, and all these different things. I got home and I kind of thought, I don't really know. I still don't know if we have anything here. I thought, well, I met a very interesting woman with an interesting story and a very sweet lady. And that was kind of where I was at that point. And so I said, you know what I'm going to do? I'm just going to start just kind of writing just what I think I envision out of this, and see if it could snowball into other things, and start speaking to her family. And can this grow? And she said, well, I thought about like a book about other, just other victims of that day. And I said, sure. We've seen that before, of different traumas. And she said, I also, there was a lot of people I've met along the way that I think are really interesting. And I kind of have this idea of like doing something about like the people I've met because of that day. And I thought that was an interesting idea, kind of the spider web of it all. But I didn't really know the extent of these people and their stories either.
Right.
So that was when I just kind of had this idea of, the people, not met on that day, but because of that day, these people I would not have met otherwise if had this day not occurred. I thought that was an interesting take on it, just an interesting way of looking at it. And then when I started finding out and, kind of digging more into who these people were, and we had a whole list of, there was, 15 people that we could have gone through. And I had to pick through and kind of figure out who I think might have the most compelling story. And I didn't want it to be all, everyone has, trauma in their life, certainly, but I didn't want it to be all the same, where it was all like, okay, this guy's, all murder, this guy's all this, I wanted like other things in there too.
Well, because it is a mix. That also surprised me. Once I kind of got into the story a little bit, though very early on, you've shifted from Las Vegas to 9/11.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay. And then we're in Hurricane Sandy and, different shootings that occurred, serial killers.
Yeah.
It is so comprehensive.
It really kind of covers a lot of ground. And that was actually kind of one of the issues when I was pitching this book, actually, was I had a lot of agents, say to me, we don't really know where this book fits. Number one, is it true crime? Sure. Is it memoir? Sure. It's not self-help, but it does have that sort of element a little bit in there.
It's definitely there.
It does live in that lane a little bit too. So, the question I got was, where does this fit on a bookshelf? And I said, isn't that your job? But, I had, one person read it and they said, none of these chapters kind of flow into the other. And I said, well, that's kind of the idea a little bit is, you got to get deep into them to kind of figure out how they do connect. And again, this woman is the one who connects all of them. But you're right. It goes from, there's serial killers, there's Hurricane Sandy, and there's sexual assault. It's kind of like, trauma on Tourette's.
Yes, absolutely. As much as I hated reading about the traumas, the horrors, the deaths, the loss, the emotions are the same. It's just how these things unfolded in our lives. A lot of times you had no control over. We like to think we have control over our lives, that every day is going to be the same. And then you wake up and the toilet backs up. But we don't. In a lot of cases, we don't. These things come from the outside in, and now you have to deal with the aftermath. Wow, it just struck me. So your criteria for inclusion, because I hate to say their stories weren't in it, but it's the diversity as well as the compelling nature of it.
Absolutely. Yeah, it was really much the diversity. It was, the compelling element of it. Accessibility was certainly another thing too. You can't write a chapter with one person. You have to have multiple people, multiple voices in there.
Yeah.
There were a lot of things that really went into it. And you're right. We also kind of tried to sort of shoehorn different people in there that were potentially chapters also. And we kind of can fit these people's stories somewhat into other chapters a little bit if they're somewhat similar. And so we try to do that very, very slyly. And I think we kind of did that. But yeah, it really was, you're right. It really came down, at the end of the day, it came down to the story. And I hate to say that one person's story is more compelling than the other, because that's not the case. It's just what fit for this project.
Right. Exactly. I was really wondering about that. Something else that you're very upfront about is, and I commend you for this, the perpetrator's name is not in that book.
Never. That was something that, thank you. That was something I decided early on. And I don't even know, honestly, I don't even know if I told MaryJo that. I just took that up and on my own and said, like, I'm going to die on this hill. I'm not, doing that. And because that was what we decided when her and I first spoke. She'd said, I don't want this to be about that night solely. And that was also what kind of steered me away from the book of just Route 91 victims. And I thought, if we're doing just a book on on victims of that day, I think we're going to have to sort of kind of try to relitigate that day a little bit. And I don't really think that we should be doing that because, of all these police investigations and FBI investigations and conspiracy theories, there's a ton of them too. But nothing changes the fact that MaryJo's husband's still gone. None of that is, And I've read all those FBI reports, all 1,000 pages of them. I've read all those different things. But it doesn't change the fact that her husband's gone. And so I said, I'm not going to relitigate this day. And that was what she didn't want to do either. My idea was, I'm not going to name this person. I'm not going to give this shooter the satisfaction of this. And let's not remember his name whatsoever. And so I don't even know if I spoke to her about that beforehand going in. I think that was just something I did. And she obviously loved it.
Yeah, you're right up front about it. And I was thrilled. You may know that I've read a few true crime books. And part of my interest is, why do they do these things? Not in this case.
Yeah.
No.
I mean, being that I was there that night, obviously this affected me also. In the early days, all of us, myself included, were trying to figure out why. We wanted a motive, because you want to really you want to tie that bow on it to kind of figure out, have that, finality. And we never got it. After a while, I really stopped caring. Now, I am human, so there is a curiosity, but it doesn't drive me. And it doesn't drive anyone that I know, except for the conspiracy theorists. They're the only ones that are really still, pounding this door. But we just really kind of thought there's just no point. This book doesn't gain anything by naming this human being and really trying to get into the mindset of this human being, because no one's been able to successfully do it. And who am I to think I can?
Yeah, I agree. Those stories have been told.
Sure.
This is a very different kind of book. I sent you a question that I had that, is this kind of a love letter? And yeah. I know it's definitely got quotes around the word love, but it struck me as you've taken really the worst humanity can do, and you're hanging the best that humanity can do. So you've got these bookends, and I much prefer to remember the support and the optimism and the altruistic part of it, because that message comes through so clearly.
I think that's a fair way of looking at it. MaryJo has always said, I want, that she wanted to do this. I think I'm at liberty to speak for her in some capacities, but she always said, I didn't want Kurt to be forgotten. That's her husband. And so I think it's a very fair way of looking at it, saying this actually is a love letter to all these different people. Because you're right. Dion Green's father, it's a love letter to his father, no doubt about that.
Yeah.
It's a love letter to Kurt Von Tillow. It's a love letter to Paulette, Dion. You're right. I shouldn't say I didn't look at it that way, but you're absolutely correct, because that is sort of the underlying sentiment of this whole thing, is taking trauma, using trauma as a transition point into something better and greater. And let's not forget these people. Let's not forget how these moments shaped these other people and turned them into these wonderful human beings that they are. And it's all out of love. I think in Jeff Dion's case, I spoke with one of his longtime friends, and I believe the direct quote was, he's still working for Paulette. Paulette died in, it was 1983.
Yes.
And he's still working for Paulette after all these years. And that nothing says love like that.
No, it truly, that really seriously struck me that way. I don't think we can generalize here because everybody has their own story.
Yeah.
And went through their own losses. How they managed to come out the other end of it. Well, you were there. How did it change you?
I think I put this in the book, I believe, but one thing that it changed about me, and really I think all of us there, all 22,000 of us, like, we all lost a little innocence that day. We all lost some innocence. In the early days, especially following that, I was very nervous about being in big crowds. I still kind of am. I was always looking for exits. I still do that, but not like I did. That was something very early on, and you just didn't feel really safe anywhere at that moment in time. Because if it can happen, I'm out here at a country concert, and granted, I was there working, but I was also enjoying myself. And if I can just be out here enjoying myself at a country concert, it can happen anywhere. If it can happen on the Las Vegas Strip, it can happen anywhere. And it was really nerve-wracking. The two things that have affected me the most to this day are fireworks, number one, without a doubt. The sound, it's not the picture of them, it's the sound of them. Because I thought, and a lot of people thought when it started, it was fireworks. And I kind of thought, what jerk brings fireworks to a concert, and who brings a bottle rocket? How did you get it in? Was kind of how I initially thought, when those first shots started going down. But fireworks to this day still get me. See, I can look at them all day long and not have an issue, but it's the sound of them. And then it's going to sound really strange, but if I see people running for no real reason, that gets me too. If I see you just on the street, like in regular street clothes, like jeans and, running, I'm going to wonder why. And I'm going to freak out a little bit. Now, if you're in workout clothes, I'm not going to bat an eye. No problem.
Right.
I saw so many people running in their clothes that night. And so if I see that, I know it's a weird one, but if I see it, I get nervous.
I don't think that's so weird. That makes absolutely perfect sense to me.
When you explain it, it makes sense. But if I just tell you, if I saw you and I said, yeah, I'm really weird about people running in street clothes, you'd say, wait, what?
Yes, I guess I see that. Yes. Yeah, by itself. But you're right. I know the context, but it's completely understandable. I was a fireman's daughter, and Dad, the first thing he did is any building we went into, he was assessing how to get out of here and where's the exit. I come in, I'm looking windows, doors, the exit, where's those lights? You're not going to catch me. And it's just something that it's a built-in mindset. I can't help it. Oh, yeah.
A lot of things have changed because of that day. It really is, your life changes, and you don't want to be defined by that day. And I realize I say this having written in a book kind of tied to that day a little bit. And that's another thing that I explain a lot is, and I think, you kind of mentioned it earlier too, is like, when you see the cover, especially, you think, okay, it's going to be about that day and kind of relitigating October 1, 2017. And I always tell everyone, this book is not about that day. This book starts on that day. And,
yes.
And it's everything that's happened after that day. So it's not really, tied to that. And so there's a lot in here. There's a lot of things in here.
Yes, definitely. It's not, it's not about the last 10 minutes of a concert.
Sure. Yeah, you're right.
But it's what people did with that.
Yeah.
And the grieving process and all of that, which many of us can relate to. But it's what you do with every day afterward. And I think you said it. You said it almost makes you better people.
Yeah.
Now you have to get through the tunnel. But once that light is on the other side, it's true. All the good that came from this, from random acts of kindness.
Yeah.
I'm going to drive across the country. I mean, every corner of the country is in this book. It's not just in Las Vegas.
Right.
It's every corner.
And that was what's funny about, you're referencing Tommy Maher, and Tommy is what an inspiration. But, we mentioned it in the book when he told his wife, when he had this epiphany, he was in the shower and he had this epiphany of what he's going to do. And I'm going to drive to the hometown of all these people killed in Las Vegas, do a random act of kindness. When he tells his wife this, his wife says, Tommy, you realize that, it's a little kooky. You realize that people come from all over the world and the country to Las Vegas. It's not just one city. So, you're going to have to go to a lot of different places for this. And he didn't care. He didn't care.
No, he's just going to do it. And that, what actually struck me too, is that his van got stolen.
Yeah.
And I'm like, come on, universe. Come on, karma. I'm like, this guy is out there doing random acts of kindness for people to remember these victims, and somebody stole his van?
Yeah.
Come on.
Funny story about Tommy. He was in Vegas, and I live in Vegas. He was in Vegas last year for the, I guess it would have been the 7th anniversary of Route 91. So he was here October 1, 2024. And we were at one hotel. MaryJo was there. I was there. Tommy, a bunch of us. And we're hanging out. And we're leaving this one hotel in Las Vegas on the Strip to go to dinner. And we're in the parking garage. And I said, Tommy's in the front, in the passenger seat. And I'm driving. And he says, Mark, you see that sign up there? And it was a sign inside the parking garage. And it said, do not enter. And I said, oh, Tommy, I know these garages. I said, Tommy, you can't even read anyway. And his response was, I can only read street signs. Because this guy just drives all day to different places to honor these victims.
Yes. How phenomenal is that?
Yeah. It's not often you get a true crime book that has as much resilience or more resilience than it does true crime. You don't get to blend those two often. And I think we did that.
I think you did it brilliantly. It's refreshing.
Yeah.
And it's uplifting. It's not just about the bad day.
Yeah.
It's like, no, you do not get to overshadow the rest of my life.
Yeah.
No, you don't. We're going to remember people. We're going to honor people, but no.
Yeah. I think you nailed that's exactly that literally is, the nutshell of the book right there is we're going to remember people. We're going to go on with their, remember their memory, go on with them and honor them and kind of see where life takes us after that. And we don't forget people, but we don't let these horrible moments be our defining factor.
Exactly. I can't say it enough because I feel like I'm repeating myself, but it is just so brilliantly woven together. I'm sure you had some moments trying to get from one point to the other and transitioning, but it's very special. It really is.
Yeah, it was an important book to write for a lot of reasons. Like I've gotten very close with MaryJo obviously over the years now, and I wanted to do it for her. I want to do it for all these victims, and selfishly, I want to do it for myself. I don't think it's even that selfish actually, but I want to do it myself because I wanted to prove that I could do it. There's also an underlying factor. This is not a sad thing necessarily, but I told my dad I was doing this book, and he was really, really proud. And I lost my dad last year, and so I wanted to kind of finish it for him also. There's that whole saying of, I'm 45, I'm not that young, but when he died, I was 43. But they said, that old adage of when you lose your father young, you spend the rest of your life trying to make him proud. And and I wasn't young per se. I was a full-grown adult, but it's one of those things where I wanted to do it also for him. And that's where. And if you look at the dedication of the book, it kind of lists a lot of the victims, and there's one name in there, Brian Gray, and you don't find his name anywhere in there. And I was like, that was the one I got in there for selfish reasons.
I did notice that, by the way. I did. Yeah. And I figured it was a relative. I didn't go into, hire a private detective to find out who Brian Gray is, but I did actually notice.
It wouldn't have been difficult to figure that one out. I was like,
But thank you for telling that story.
Yeah.
It's very special. It's where I come to that. I got to take it all in.
Yeah. It's a whirlwind of a book. It took a long time to, create it and figure out which, what lane we wanted to go down. And sometimes you just start writing, and I've heard this from a lot of writers. Sometimes you start writing, you don't really know where it's going to take you. You just kind of let it flow and see what happens. In some capacities, that's in some segments, that's what happened. Was there are some things you knew exactly, okay, we got to do this, this, this. It's almost like improv, where you have to get to this point. How you get there can kind of go here or here or here. It can go off the path, but as long as we get there, that's sort of what happened in a lot of areas of this book. Is I know I have to get to this point so the reader can make sense of it. But how I get there, who knows?
I thought it was smooth.
Thank you. And I love the idea of, and I actually happened to be pretty late in the process in this, there's a lot of timeline jumps where we're going from, modern day. This is 2022. And now we're back in 1984. And now we're up in 2021 and these kind of things. The timeline jumps came to me later on when I thought, it's actually a fun way of keeping the reader vested in this and not, really bogged down with like, oh, now I'm still stuck in 1985 right now. Can I move past this? And so like suddenly it's just like, oh, we're in a new timeline and we can go back to this other timeline. And that's the beauty of writing. It's the beauty of reading is whatever world you want to create in your head from the words on the page, you can do. And that was kind of what I tried to do with the timeline hops.
Exactly. I actually loved that because I knew we were going into another story.
Yeah.
And inevitably, there is going to be that little thread that you're following along, and it brings you back to MaryJo.
Correct. Yep, that's what I say. She is the thread who ties all these people together. I joke that it's kind of like the Kevin Bacon game, 6 Degrees of Kevin Bacon, or whatever. That's sort of been my joke for a while. Is like MaryJo is the Kevin Bacon in this case. Where how do we relate to her?
She's the thread. So it's like, oh, okay, here we go. Oh, it's 1972. Back 1984. And there's surprises.
Yeah.
Things I didn't see coming at all that had me absolutely in tears in the good way.
Yeah.
Which that doesn't happen reading a true crime book very often, let me tell you, that you're like so cheering for something that you're just overwhelmed in tears. I don't think that's ever happened to me before, but it happened reading this one.
A friend of mine who was reading it, he was on a flight from Vegas to Hawaii or maybe coming back, whatever it was. But he messaged me after he got home and he said, well, he used some choice words for me. I won't repeat those words, but he used some very colorful language. And it was, you had me crying in the middle of an airplane. Thanks for that. Nice.
Yes.
Not my fault, or maybe it is. I will take credit or blame, whichever you'd like.
That was it. A lot of the time, it appears at least a few times in there, you talk about trusting the process.
Yeah.
All kinds of connotations and differing situations where that comes up. So do you still trust the process?
I do, absolutely. And that was a Tommy Maher thing. Absolutely, where he, kind of tells everyone to trust the process and we'll figure it out along the way. There was nothing that was never my mantra, but it always was. I just never said those words. But yeah, I certainly trust the process. I think this book is proof of that. That you've spoken with thousands of authors, I'm sure. There's nothing more intimidating than page 1, because when you're trying to write something, because it's just a blank page. And how do I make this 200 pages, 300 pages, 250 or whatever it is, and you just got to trust the process and figure out, do I have something here? If I really truly believe I do, then let it rip.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think I absolutely trust the process. And I think this book is proof of that. I'm hoping to trust the process again.
Well, I was going to say, this is your first book, right?
It was my first book, yeah. It was my first book. I've always wanted to write one. I never knew, number one, that I have it in me, which I think is a fair thing. Number two, what's it going to be about? This, to be fair, was not what I thought my first book would be about.
I bet.
But, we got here somehow. So, again, trust the process.
There it is. Yeah. Trust the process because it came out beautifully.
Well, thank you. Yeah. you're right. It's tough to write something coherently and leave enough of a cliffhanger that makes it interesting for people to actually pick it up.
Yeah. Yeah. I hope that that my listeners will say, I know there's more to this story. I know she said there's more to the story. Now I want to know what I'm missing. Yeah.
And like I said, every chapter in this was there's certainly a silver linings aspect of every chapter. No question about that. And I wanted to sort of make every chapter worthwhile and tie it in a nice little bow at the end. And so that was sort of the goal. And that was again something that, talk about trust in the process. That was something that was not part of the plan going into it, but it kind of became the plan as time went on, because again, just sort of goes back to that whole idea of, this is the end point you have to be at, but how we get there is, how we veer off and do all these different, roadways is different. But that was kind of what became of it. And after about 2 or 3 chapters, I said, this is the format. This is it.
Here it is.
We need to, I need to make sure that we're weaving our way into all these, traumas and these terrible things that happen to people. And then get to this point where we think, there is some good in the world.
Yeah, in spite of bad things that happen, there's a lot of good out there. A lot of good people who are energized to spread the goodness. Yeah. And it's so refreshing.
I think this book goes from sort of like, heavy read to light read, all in the same, literally almost every other page, it seems like. It's like, geez, this is, woo. And then, 1 page later saying, oh, this is quite nice,
Yes.
And it keeps going back and forth. It really is kind of a whiplash.
Well, when I said it's smooth, I was talking more about the transitioning from point A to point B, not the fits and starts that you have emotionally.
Yes.
Because you're grieving and you're being empathetic and sympathetic and relating it to yourself. And then you're, like I said, cheering in tears from joy that it came out the way it did, and was so unexpected in a lot of cases. What else do you want to tell me about your book? What didn't get into the book? What ideas were rejected?
I don't know if rejected is the right word, but there were a lot of things that I just wasn't sure if they really added to the stories. And a lot of it was just background stuff, because, the heart of these is the people, what they went through and how they've overcome it. And that was what, it's almost like I needed a poster above my head every single day to remind myself, this is, focus on these 3 things, and don't really kind of veer off course. But it was more of the background stuff that kind of, I realized, does this need to be in here? And everything in there is deliberate. It might not seem it in like many books, you can wonder, do I really need to know this background info? And in some cases you might not, but I think it adds to the overall arc and the overall character development. I hate to call these people characters because they're real human beings, but you get what I'm saying. But it adds to the character development of all this background on, okay, this is why this person is the way they are, and this is why this person became this version of themselves. So it wasn't per se that things were rejected or ideas were rejected, other than what I mentioned. There was a list of people on who we thought about maybe including and ultimately didn't for a variety of reasons. I was pretty laser focused on what was going to happen. We were going to talk about, some things certainly got thrown out in the editing process, but that's just typical editing. Some of the things where there's a military man we speak about in the book, and there were some things in there that we couldn't discuss because he wasn't quite sure if they were classified or not still.
Yeah.
I guess that was one chapter where maybe things were rejected a little bit. And what I did also was I kind of, when I wrote the chapters on the individual people, I let them see the chapters on the first draft, at least. And I said, I need this for accuracy's sake. If you really have an issue with, I'm not asking about the format or anything like that, but I really want to know for accuracy's sake. And, some people said, oh no, this is not exactly right. This is wrong. I wasn't too proud to say, oh, how dare you, and
right.
With his, there were certain things where he says, we probably shouldn't say that. We should probably take that out. So I don't know if I'd say it was, go back to your question, I'm not sure that it was a full idea that was rejected, but there were certain things that were taken out of his chapter specifically because we weren't quite sure if, should we be saying these?
Yes, I do understand that. I did work at the UN briefly, and still there's things where I don't talk about because I'm not sure
Yeah.
if we could, and there's no way to find out. It's not like you can call up a switchboard and say, hey, that thing that went, is that still, can we talk about it? Just leave it out. Just leave it out.
That's it.
Yeah.
Is it incredibly pertinent to the story? If it's not, and you're questioning it, leave it out.
I was wondering because the characters that you're presenting, characters
Sure.
in quotes.
And they are a bunch of characters. Like, don't get it twisted. They are a bunch of characters, these people.
But you care about them. And that's an art form in itself, being in a chapter to be able to describe, to give you enough background to fill in so that you care about this person and then go with them on their journey through this chapter.
Yeah.
So you did that. I thought you did a great job with that as well.
Yeah, we really tried to span sort of America in some cases here, not just physical location, because we got stories that are in, you mentioned like there's New York and there's Ohio and there's California and Nashville and so on and so forth, but we also wanted to span everything in terms of politics, and it's not a political book by any stretch, as you know, but MaryJo, she'll tell you, I lean conservative. Jeff Dion, very much a liberal. Dion Green's a liberal, and some people we have no idea, and that's okay too. But we're trying to sort of, blend all these people together and say, hey, we're not all that different either. We've all been through a lot of stuff, a lot of trauma, and we can lean on each other regardless of what our backgrounds are, where we're from, how our age, our political leanings, all these different things. At the end of the day, a good person's a good person.
Yeah. But you had, like I said, such an eclectic group of good people.
Yeah.
Who had these events, had they not happened, would probably not have crossed paths.
Ever. Yeah.
And they do. And you have these rock solid, loving friendships that have developed. That's why I wonder, how do you bottle this? There's so much divisiveness. And again, I'm not getting political either. This is not a political podcast, but we're so divisive in so many ways. So, man, if we could just stick this in a bottle and pour it in the water supply. I mean, it doesn't work that way, but boy, I wish it did.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny. I mean, we've talked about it a few times actually now, Tommy, but Tommy Marr he drives around and he walks around also with these little coins. I think it's in my car right now, but he has these little coins that he kind of hands out and it says, be the good. And God, just, a couple of words, you read those words, just say, you're right. If we could just be the good, or find the good, be the good, what a different place this would be.
Oh, yeah. We seriously need to work on that. It was the golden rule when I was growing up. Treat other people as you want to be treated.
Oh, yeah.
And it's like, whatever happened to that? Well,
it's funny because I get asked the question quite a bit too, is, not including MaryJo, what other stories have stuck with you from this book? And the answer is all of them, obviously. But there's one that's not a person really highlighted per se, but is involved in a chapter. And it's the story from Uvalde. That woman, she always kind of sticks with me. She always really sticks with me because, it's a woman who was blamed for Uvalde. Mm-hmm. I don't want to say, much, but she was blamed in those early hours, those early days, really. She was blamed for it. And then she finally realized, oh, you actually did everything right. And there's video proof of you doing everything right. And then she never really got that apology.
Ever.
And never got that, I don't say satisfaction, but she was never really cleared publicly. And everything that's happened to her and how, these other people have helped her along the way too. That's one story. Her story always kind of sticks with me.
Oh, me too.
Yeah. Yeah. She's a tough cookie, that woman.
Yes. And people have to remember that when things like this happen, there is so much misinformation in those first hours, days.
Yeah.
Take it with a grain of salt, because we all get fascinated. We wind up sitting in front of the TV, watching it over and over, and then you might switch a channel and you just, it just replays. People don't know what's going on. Like I said, going back to October 1st, firecrackers. Yeah. Where is it coming from? The speakers echoing the shots, so it sounds like more than one shooter. Yep. You were there and you didn't know what happened.
Correct.
So how can a reporter, and not to bash reporters because they're doing the best that they've got with the information they have, it's just shaky information. Yeah. You're someone who was there. You didn't know which hotel was coming from, if there was 1, 3, whoever. And it's only later when we get to things really unfold that you start to having it make more sense and be more accurate. So it's like, stop, listening in those first emotional moments. And your emotional memory, things we react, unfortunately, negatively, we tend to remember that most. Yeah. So it's like, stop.
I didn't know for a couple hours after that the shooting was coming from Mandalay Bay. And when I first heard Mandalay Bay, in my mind, I envisioned someone on the casino floor just going in there, god awful with a gun. At no point did I think this guy's in a hotel room in a corner suite. So it took me a couple hours to even understand that was what happened. In MaryJo's case, we mentioned in the book that her husband just got shot and fatally, and she had, her sister-in-law and her niece were also shot, and they were in the hospital, and she's going into shock, and she has to tell the whole family, hey, this would happen, like at a concert of all places. I mean, she didn't find out that it was coming from Mandalay Bay until about 7 a.m, 9 hours after the shooting started. So you're right. It's just take a minute, absorb everything, see what plays out, and then we can start forming some opinions. Unfortunately, that's not how our world works.
I know. And I keep saying it and I keep hoping. And even for myself, when I start getting swept up in the moment, it's like, stop.
Yeah.
Go do podcast, turn off the TV. You're not going to get completely accurate information. It's just not going to happen. That's and you have to be able to reshape your opinion when new information comes forth.
That's the thing is, ironically, MaryJo might have had the most accurate information when she first kind of got on, started watching the news and reading about everything, was because she was, 9 hours after. So things started shaping up. I mean, I still remember getting home that evening. I mean, when all the roads were blocked off, and you couldn't, and I remember I Ubered down there that night, so I didn't have my car. You couldn't get an Uber, you couldn't get a taxi, my car wasn't there. So I didn't get home until probably close to 12:30 or 1 o'clock, and the shooting started at 10:05. I remember getting home and kind of putting on the local news, and it was already being covered at that point, certainly. And it was, the death toll was 2 or 3. And I thought, I saw more than that. I know that's not right. And so you just kind of watch this toll tick up and tick up and tick up. And I knew it was going to tick up because I personally saw more than 2 or 3. But you're right. It's one of those things where, if you just let everything play out, give it a second, let everything breathe, and then we can start forming some opinions. But we just don't do that in this day and age, unfortunately.
No, it's 24/7 around the clock. Got to fill the airtime, and
everybody wants to be first.
You run with what you're told. It's just you don't have a chance to vet whether or not what you're being told is even close to accurate.
Yeah.
I go to CrimeCon, and I don't know if you know this or not. One of the officers was presenting. It was CrimeCon 22 in Las Vegas, and was presenting on the October 1st shooting. And he was in that suite, that guy. And he had other guns set up on the beds in like the bedroom off to the side.
Oh, yeah.
And he accidentally locked himself out of that. An act that actually saved lives. He couldn't get to them because his key card was in the adjacent room.
It was a connecting room.
Yeah. And he couldn't get back in. So he couldn't get to those guns and he couldn't use them. And I'm like, there's that little mercy that happened because he had 2 others significantly. I do not know my firearms very well, but they were very big, black, ugly looking, scary guns.
I've seen the photos of those big, black, scary guns. Yeah. So, I also marvel sometimes. This is not kind of maybe off topic a little bit, but they found 1,057 shell casings in that room.
Yep.
The fact that, and I don't want to say only because like if you're one of the 58 people, like you don't really care, but like the fact that only 58 people fatally died with that many bullets is kind of incredible, and also shows what a bad shot the guy is. So
oh yeah.
That's my little needle towards him, is like, what a bad shot you are. You think you're so awesome and you're trying to play God here, but you actually can't shoot at all.
You can't shoot, and you locked yourself out of the other room, and you couldn't get your own guns, you moron. Yeah, this is the guy. Yeah, well, we don't have to talk about him, but I wanted to share. I didn't know because this was like the first time I think he had talked about that, and it hadn't been something that was out there, and I was like, holy mackerel!
Yeah,
there's the little mercy in this horrific thing that could have been so much worse.
Yeah, saved lives more than likely.
Yep, I absolutely believe that. So, Mark, what is your next project? Do you know?
I do not. I have ideas, certainly, in my head. I don't really know yet what I'm going to do. I have looked into true crime, certainly. This book, as we kind of talked about, it sort of blends true crime, memoir, and other kind of genres. And I've looked into both those genres, certainly in a more traditional sense.
Yeah.
I've also looked into like murder mysteries. Ironically, that's what I read most of is murder mysteries. And so I've looked into that idea, and I've actually I started doing one of those. I'm very, very early, still shaping that. And I'm wondering if I even have an idea or not. But I guess this book also started with, is there an idea here or not? So who knows? But this is probably not the last. I can tell you that. It's probably not the last thing I'll be doing on the publishing front.
Good. Because I like your style. I actually read crime fiction in my off time because sometimes dealing with the real all the time, you just need a palate cleanse. So I need to go pretend for a while. I still am interested in the mystery, why this happened, but sometimes you do. The crime fiction can be a lot of fun, and let's face it, it comes out the way you want it to.
That is true. You don't have to worry about, is this accurate? Because if it's fiction, you just kind of, I don't want to say you can make it up, but you kind of just make it up.
Yeah, you can. You absolutely can. Yeah.
Yeah, I kind of get my I love, remember Sue Grafton? I read a bunch of her stuff. I'm a huge Robert Craze fan also. He's got a lot out there. So I sort of like look at what they do and I think, could I do that? And the answer is no, I could not do what they do, but could I do it differently?
Do it the Mark Gray way.
Exactly. We'll see. I think there's probably something in the pipeline. I just don't know. I don't quite know what yet. There's too many ideas, and they're gotta see which one gets trapped in the brain.
Mm-hmm. That OCD kicks in. How am I going to do this? What's going to happen to this? You get invested in your characters, and you have to see what happens to them.
Yeah. I gotta see how much time my wife will let me take away from her. That's we'll figure that part out.
Very true. Listen, thank you so much. This has been such a delightful conversation.
Didn't even feel like an interview. It felt like just chat among friends. That's the way I like to do it. I hate to sit there and say, now let me ask you about your. Not me. I just want to hang out and chat and just have a conversation. Much more fun. That's easiest way. Yeah. So this was wonderful. Thank you so much. I've enjoyed it. And I do want to hear about any future publishing coming up. I'll still let you know. Fantastic. All right, man. Be good. I appreciate you. Take care. All right. Bye-bye now. Okay, so if that conversation did not convince you all to read Mark Gray's book, The Las Vegas Massacre Connections, I don't know what will. I know it's a true crime book, but I also believe it is a blueprint for healing and recovery. And it demonstrates how interconnected we all are. So thank you for listening. I see you as you hear me. And our next book is Chasing Down the Zombie Hunter by Troy A. Hillman. Hot off the presses, this engaging true crime book was just published on October 7th, 2025. So you need to read this one with me. Chasing Down the Zombie Hunter is an extraordinary, detailed inside story
of how an ex-CPA turned detective, Troy Hillman, and an elite team of detectives forged a cold case unit determined to solve a brutal double murder that had haunted Phoenix, Arizona for 2 decades. Thank you for listening. Reminder, if you plan to attend CrimeCon 2026, use my code, lowercase letters, one word, Murder Shelf, and save 10% on your badge. You can also join my Patreon for $2 to $4 a month, where you can help select our next true crime book to be featured. Additionally, I am teaching a class on serial killers. So thank you for listening, Murder Bookies. Take a few minutes to leave an awesome review. Apple Podcasts could use some Murder Shelf Book Club attention. Share your thoughts with me at jill@murdershelfbookclub.com, on X, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and YouTube. My sources, photographs, show notes, and links are on my blog. Be safe, be smart, and always trust your gut and lock your doors and windows. Written and produced by Jill, all rights reserved. Music, The Pewter Elephant by Blue Dot Sessions.